Welcome back to the Flower Essence Podcast. Today, Rokana and I will be talking about, everyone's favorite feeling of being an imposter. This is such an obstacle. We were thinking about it in context with all the students that we're working with, and anytime you start something new in life, you are often going to experience a certain amount of imposter syndrome. And it's sort of like, when are you ready to step out? When are you actually well prepared enough, or do you know enough? All of those things are going to come into play with what we're going to talk about today as far as essences goes. But Ro was doing some research on this topic and found some really fun and interesting underpinnings, ways to think about this particular issue, because it is something it's so common, and I think we've probably all been there at some point.
Yeah, it is so common. 70% of people at some stage in their life have experienced some form of imposter syndrome. And it, about a third of young people, especially. And it's also really common among high achievers and gifted people. And so I started deep diving into it because I kind of wanted to find out a little bit more of the root causes, like what are some of these root things? I mean, are people born with it, or does it happen over a lifetime, or after something maybe goes wrong in somebody's life and maybe experience a failure or a setback and have trouble having and maybe have lost confidence in themselves in their abilities. And so that is really the most common reason for it, is something like that happening. But there's also, you know, the upbringing and perhaps the way that we've been raised and being um, given a lot of love and attention when we do something high achieving, or get a good grade on a test. And so we can start to tie our self-worth and our value into these outer things, into these achievements, and that we end up putting a lot of pressure on ourselves because of that, and that can really just grow throughout a lifetime. And some of us may think, when we've lost that self confidence, or we don't have that self confidence, that when we have success, we attribute it to luck or other factors instead of our own ability. But yet when we fail, we attribute it to our own ability. So there's that imbalance in what we're blaming ourselves for or giving ourselves credit for. And we might minimize our achievements and not feel that we deserve praise. We don't feel like we've done anything to deserve getting recognized for our efforts. And then that might lead to avoiding new challenges and hesitating to try new things. So there can just be this persistent doubt of one's abilities. And that's all part of the definition of imposter syndrome. And so, back to the root causes, these family dynamics, this upbringing, can be a big part of it. Can be part of a personality that has a lot of perfectionism, and that can really color our ability to feel good about our achievements if we're picking apart or seeing the flaws in everything that we do. Um, it can be something that happens in workplaces and academic environments. So, anywhere where there's a lot of competition or a lot of highly skilled people, then there's a lot of pressure, for obvious reasons. And the social and cultural factors about this are, there's stereotypes about who can be competent and successful, and we might have internalized those things, and that might color our thinking of how successful we can be in something or another. And then that personal experience, like what if I had a failure at doing something early on, I might not believe that I can succeed again if I try it again. And so, and the more failures they can really, hamper a person's opinion of themselves. And so, we have these different aspects of looking at um, how to deal with these underlying causes. And I thought that would be an interesting way to look at the flower essences that can help us out.
A persistent challenge for a lot of people. It's something that you just kind of, on some level, you have to just kind of hear that voice that's telling you that, you're not capable of doing this or that you don't know enough or whatever that might be. And just kind of go, thanks for your input. And can you just go sit over there for a while? And maybe you're not that part of you that feels like this shouldn't be the one behind the wheel. In our lives, we need to compartmentalize those parts and go, okay, I appreciate your input. I know you're trying to take care of me. Like, that's the voice of anxiety is trying to keep you safe. And sometimes that's really good advice. And sometimes it's really bad advice. That's certainly one of the things that I recognize with clients. And if well, in the case of working with somebody, doing some mentoring with somebody to help them, start working in flower essences. This happened not too long ago. And she started all the what ifs, like, well, what if this were to happen? And we can answer that question. And then, but underneath every what if question, there was another what if question, like loaded up and ready to go. And on some level, she had become so connected to this voice of anxiety that she thought that this was a good guidance. And really it's just anxiety who's just can just give you a new question for every one you might answer. There will be 8 more, no problem. And so recognizing that that's what that is, then you can file those questions under, more noise than data, not something to really pay close attention to or listen to, because those are things that are pretty unlikely to happen. Sure, anything's possible, but that's not actually something that you need to do in order to get ready to go and serve or to be what you want to be in the world. You don't have to um, know the answer to every possible potential question that might ever come up. Probably not. You can always look things up. So Larch is one of the ones that I would bring in, my first line in this context. Larch is such an important essence in helping you try new things, even if you're gonna, flump, even if you're not gonna be able to do it perfectly the first time. Larch has that courage to fail. We're talking small f fail, not large f fail. These are minor wobbles, and there's something that's going to happen to everybody anytime you start something new. You're not going to be perfect at it yet. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect. The perfectionism is such a trap. And Larch really helps you do things anyways. Larch is such an interesting looking tree. It's so gangly when it's young, and it gets great stature when it's old. And it's kind of like it encourages us to be gangly. It encourages us to try something new, maybe not be great at it at first, but keep trying and you'll get better and things are actually going to work out fine. I just love Larch in so many contexts, but certainly in this one. And I know that you were looking also at Tamarack, which is very closely related, and it's one of the ones in the Alaskan essences. Is that one that you wanted to bring in?
I did. I wanted to bring in both. I mean, obviously, Larch is like the first one for any of us working with flower essences for this thing because it's such a classic when you're doubting your abilities or uh, you have got a fear of failure and judgment. And I also believe it is a species where it's one of the first to grow, a pioneer species. Yeah, yeah. So I know that you've talked about that a lot in the past, and I love that idea of it. That the pioneer, it's out there, um, doing something that requires courage. And as you say, it's gangly, it might not look pretty, but it's out there taking that first step for everybody. And so I love thinking about that energy with the larch. And that's how I have because I've felt that way so many times. I mean, you can really relate with that. And also that's how I personally have pushed through a lot of my own imposter syndrome, is just like kind of bare knuckling it and like feeling that fear and doing it anyway kind of attitude. And, you know, subsequently, I've looked a little bit more deeply into what drives some of these things in my own self. But for most of my, my career in the corporate world, it was just kind of that. It was, having those fears, feeling like an imposter, and just totally winging it and doing it anyway. And, with that sort of white knuckle, in the hiding how it actually made me feel, right? So I love the Larch, and that will always be kind of a first line on imposter syndrome. And then Alaskan Essences has the Tamarack, which is in that same species, I believe. And it also works in a similar way. I think that, and maybe they both work this way, but there's also the concept of people who for some reason have more of a negative mindset, in that nothing will go the way they want it to go, kind of that dark cloud personality. And um and it's like an identification with um with the difficulty of it and the problem of it, rather than the ability to solve the problem. And so that's another way to think about it for the people who do tend to have that as their baseline, or their default in having that kind of view of the world. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that tendency towards negativity, it's useful to recognize that that's just the way that our minds work. We're always going to look for the worst case scenario. That I mean, that's the anxiety coming through also. But just to recognize that the brain is a great problem solving machine. Give it a problem to solve that's actually solvable, and send it on its way and let it go do its thing and come back and bring you something cool. If you just let it run on its own and can create problems to be solved, it can do that too, but it's not really very useful. Give it something concrete to do. And I'm with you that the Larch and the Tamarack are both really good pairs for this dynamic. I really like Gentian for this aspect of this negative framework, this way of seeing life as like everything's going to fail. I'm not going to be good at this. Why should I even try? Gentian gives a nice sort of fortifying effect that helps you to connect to your ability to try and to trust. It's really that character of trusting something's coming through you. I like to think about of like, it's not about me doing this, it's about me being led. It's like me, it's the plants are working through me in the context of being working in flower essences. I am not having to really do anything. I'm just here to be a conduit and to let the essences and the plants and the wisdom and the insights and the words and everything that are coming through me. It's really not about me individually. So it takes some mental pressure off if I can maintain that perspective. And so I find that to be a helpful one as well, with that gentian helping you to keep from kind of sliding into that depressive state of like, oh, well, this will never work. Gentian kind of gives you a little bit of that upwelling. I'm always thinking about the gentian flowers, and they don't open until the sun's right, until the sunlight has come out. So they really do have this quality of timing their bloom, timing their opening when the sun comes out. So they help you to wait until the right moment and then go. So it's your energies aren't wasted. You are able to trust in the timing of things, and then to be able to take really good and timely action when it is the right moment to do that.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I want to add on to that about having trust with the plants. So if you are a flower essence practitioner, or any kind of practitioner that works with plants on this level, this is advice that I give commonly with the folks that I mentor as well, in that we can get caught up in trying to give a lot of structure or teachings about philosophies around the play, or providing detail, too much detail, or too many data points, or like trying to do it, or combining it with other modalities, trying to do everything we can to prove that the flower essence is going to do, or it works this way, or is the right one because of this, um, or we get scared that we're not making the right choices for creating a blend for someone, and question ourselves and our ability to pick the right flowers, or all of these things like kind of go in the mind of a florist practitioner. And I'm sure this can be translated to other practices. And the bottom line is, we're not doing the work here. The plants are doing the work. We're not doing the work. The plants are doing the work. This is like a mantra that I've said to myself many, many times in order to first of all, get my ego out of whether it's not enough ego or too much ego, like both of those things can happen. We want it to be balanced. And, um, and it's just a great reminder. It's a great something to remember. And I think of that with a lot of other aspects of life, with a lot of what I get overwhelmed and feel like too much of an over responsibility for what I'm putting out there. There is a sitting back, a stepping back into a trust that, I what I'm bringing out is the right thing to bring out at the right time, as you say, and that I have to trust not just nature and the natural world, but myself for doing what I'm doing. And I know that Cerato is a great one for doing that. I don't know if you have more to say about Cerato. I know it's one of the plants that you love and grow and have a beautiful specimen of in your garden.
It's an essence I've been, a little bit obsessed with, and I do love the plant so much. I'm really grateful that that one became part of the Bach. Dr. Bach found it growing at a garden, and that he brought it into his system because it's so helpful for helping you know what you know, and that what you know is enough. You don't have to keep going out and doing more. You will, because those of us who are interested in this field tend to be lifelong learners. That's wonderful. But the lifelong learning becomes a trap if you always feel like you don't know enough. And if you need to go out and take another certification, or one, then I'll be ready. Because that then you'll be ready is never going to happen. You'll never be closer to doing the work that you're here to do if you're always like, okay, then I'll do one more thing, and then I'll do one more thing. That's that eternal student syndrome. And it's so funny that when you are, learning to serve, learning to be, a practitioner or a teacher or whatever, you're never going to know it all. You just won't. And in order to, this is definitely something that I had to talk to myself when 15 years ago I started working as a practitioner. I just had to tell myself that 15 years from now, or 20 years from now, or whatever time in the future, I will know a lot more than I know now. But I'm not going to get there until I start doing it. You actually have to start doing the thing until you can get good at doing the thing. You can't, it doesn't come backwards. You can't wait until you're good enough to do the thing and then start doing the thing. It's unfortunately never going to work out, because you'll never be ready. You actually have to do it for 6 months, and then you'll start being ready. So get that started, get that out of the way as quickly as you can, because that's going to it's going to start you on the path. So Cerato is a really good one to help you connect into to your own wisdom. I just have this image of the like that beautiful sky blue flower, and it just channels that light down into your heart and channels that information and that wisdom of your higher self down into your own being. And you can just rest in that. You can just rest in that knowledge of that you know what you need to know in this moment. You're sufficient. You don't have to keep going out and doing more. That's my Cerato story. I think we could also bring in agave into this context. Agave is one of the ones from Desert Alchemy, and that is the classic essence for the perpetual student syndrome. She terms it the late bloomer's essence. So if you've spent a lot of your life, getting ready to get ready, this essence might be one to help you get to the stage of being ready and doing the thing, rather than continually waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting.
And all of the essences for self-esteem and confidence, of course, are helpful as well in this situation. And I love the the Buttercup for just valuing your own uniqueness and being able to see just that inner light of your soul, that beauty of yourself, and having that internally is a a structure, a scaffolding for being able to do something that requires courage, that requires putting yourself out in the world, that um, requires being visible. And maybe that's also something we might want to talk about, because I think that um, being visible, there's a lot of fear around that, and for good reason. Through for from women especially, because throughout the centuries, women have been persecuted for knowing too much or being healers, or for whatever it is. It's all, it's this ancestral fear of being persecuted. And other groups, of course, there's so many groups that have been persecuted throughout history.
And you're bringing in this idea of, the buttercup with, I see it, through the lens of the botanical family, and so the buttercup is part of the Ranunculaceae family, and other members of this family include Columbine and Black Cohosh. And this family is known for having some, inherent chemical toxicity. Certainly Buttercup is something that, if your cattle were to eat a bunch of it, they would get sick. So there's something baked into the signature of this plant of, being able to express yourself, and that having that charisma and having that, it's in Buttercup's case, it's people who don't think that they have any. They don't recognize themselves as being special or important or unique. And then when we get into maybe Black Cohosh, which I think kind of fits in a little bit with what you're saying, is that fear of visibility, that fear of something bad happening. Black Cohosh has a strong shadow component, that terror of being annihilated, which you're talking about coming through. And, on some level in the world in which we live, in order to be a self-employed person or a professional, a lot of times we have to dance with that visibility thing. I remember when we were first starting the podcast, it was kind of terrifying putting ourselves out there. And now it's part of our lives and kind of normal, but still, for somebody to start doing that, you could really, everyone's heard horror stories. Things do happen. But being able to like come in full alignment with yourself, bringing the parts of you that are, ready to lead and ready to show up for the people who you want to speak to, those, working with that shadow rather than sort of flogging yourself to do the thing, but actually just, hand holding with that shadow part. And this is why I'm just seeing the Black Cohosh kind of coming through for this, of helping you to, catalyze that shadow, bring it with you that, I know that that happened in the past. I know that that's a possibility, but I'm going to do this anyways because this is what I feel like I'm here to do is to share and to be more visible and to speak to the people with whom I need to speak. And, this essence can help you to find that courage within yourself to show up, to put your head up above the the line and sort of say, hey, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I have to share.
Absolutely. And if we need to be careful doing it, we need to be careful doing it. But, we do need to find our path in how and what we'll do and how and what we'll show ourselves. I wanted to bring in the Northern Green Orchid because that is from Alaskan. And it does also speak to this really strong fear of being visible and being exposed. And yet, as we're trying to step into our power or our mastery or, put ourselves out there into the world, um, in that place of vulnerability, there's more of a feeling of protection, like protecting ourselves and our hearts. And so that we can just strongly radiate out our light and feel protected while doing so. And it has that it does feel like it's not just for us personally, but helping along this sort of higher purpose, this sort of evolutionary urge to um, to have this higher purpose effect, on the planet.
The orchids are such, great precision healers. They're so important in the practice to be able to just dial in that quality of healing, and that the green orchids, the green flowering orchids, they have such a transformative potential for like shifting our relationship with the world, for shifting that disconnect that we might have with the planet or the earth, because that's really where we're all standing. And if you're standing solidly on the earth in your feet, bringing up your energy all the way up from the earth, then what you have to say is going to be clearer and more dynamic. And in any way, whether you're being more public or whether you're working on a one-to-one, the clearer your information is, the stronger you are in yourself, the better you'll feel, and the better that the person that you're holding space for will feel. They will connect to that you're in your power. Whether you're saying a word or not, they will know that the other person on the other end of the line is really there for them.
That's so good. That is exactly it. People really can pick up on so much more than we might give them credit for, and our energy matters in the work that we do, especially as flower essence practitioners, but in everything that we do. I talked about sort of winging it and white knuckling it when I was earlier in my career. And, I don't know how well I did or not comparatively, but the thing is when you're working in the healing arts, like your energy is so important. We want to have that light shine through and that energy come through from our center and radiate outward while we're grounded on this planet to be able to do that well and to be able to really communicate from our center, from our heart, and with integrity, and be kind to yourself so that your love can radiate outwards. It does have to start with yourself. It does have to start with feeling that way about yourself and being kind to yourself. And so I'd love to even talk about some essences in that regard. And I put what I thought about one, Kathleen, but I would like you to talk about it because this is your baby. This is Lady Banks Rose. And I think it's just an absolute lovely essence from your Flora of Asia line.
Thank you for bringing Lady Banks Rose in. It does have this character of, essentially unconditional self-acceptance. It just, it's an incredibly fragrant rose, beautiful white flowering rose that is just exuberant. It's a big climbing rose, and it just radiates this quality of just holding you in the space of appreciation and regard, and nothing else matters. All the imperfections, you feel like you're not good enough, you feel whatever it is, it's almost like it just washes away all of those little worries and concerns and just holds you in this space of you're fine, you're perfect just the way you are. Don't have to go do anything. Just in this moment, in this space, you are just fine. You're good enough, which is probably a place that we should all revisit as much as possible. And I know you were talking about, or you're thinking about bringing sunflower in, and that's such another important one. It's like we created this chalice in the heart of being good enough and held, and then the sunflower, which helps us to rise up and to shine.
Yeah, it it's a key one for that confidence for sure. But I also wanted to just be sure to bring in Alpine Azalea because in that same note as the Lady Banks Rose, it's helping you have unconditional love and support for yourself. And it's one that I've used so much in client blends, and it's one that struck me from the very first time I ever read the description about it. It said that um, it's for those who live in an attitude of conditional self-acceptance. And that just hit me like, I mean, it's like it was like a slap in the face. It was something that I didn't even realize that I had been doing to myself when I first read about this and learned about this essence, that, I thought that I accepted myself, but I mean, it was conditionally. There were all these little conditions in my subconscious that I wasn't even really aware of. And so I love this essence for it helping to accept all the parts of myself, the parts that I love and the parts that I don't love so much. Really great in working with any kind of parts work with it, which I'm not an expert in, of course, but um, it does make me think about the parts, like the inner parts, right? And there's always the parts that you might not like about yourself, and this Alpine Azalea is beautiful for that. And yeah, back to sunflower, that to me is, we've got the Buttercup. Perhaps somebody doesn't has a not evolved ego where they just don't value themselves and their uniqueness. And the sunflower, it can help bring that underdeveloped ego up to a healthy ego. And then on the flip side, as most flower essences are these beautiful, sort of modulators, if the ego is like too much, it can help balance that back down to a healthy amount. And you can't help but understand sunflower in the confidence realm by just having ever seen one grow, because they shoot up so fast. They're so big. They're such a large flower, and they stand so upright, so tall, and they have just this air of confidence, this beautiful yellow or orangish gold radiating flower that faces the sun, and it's kind of like, here I am in just an absolute lovely display of confidence.
And for me, I always see a really good component or compatriot for sunflower in gold, essence, to be able to support that quality of of value and connecting to your worth, sunflowers don't have a self-valuing problem. It's like they know who they are. They stand up strong and tall, and they face the sun, and they just radiate presence. And I feel like gold pairs really nicely with that for helping to support that, almost like from the ground, really, really getting connected into the ground and getting, connecting into those veins of gold in the earth of getting our roots in there and really, um, you know, feeling solid in our value. Like our value rises up out of the earth and infuses us with light. I think maybe just I feel like one more to bring us into the active phase, into the engagement phase of this whole challenge. And it feels like Blackberry would be a good place to go at this point to round out some of these essences we've been talking about. Blackberry, if you've ever had Blackberry growing in a garden, you know it that it will start taking over. It's very sturdy. It's very strong. Doesn't need a lot of permission to grow. It just needs your inattention for maybe a year, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. And obviously the berries are so wonderful, but the flower has this beautiful, pale purple, pink purple quality, and just has this exuberance for life. And there's nothing that can hold Blackberry down. Blackberry is always willing to give it a try, willing to keep putting effort into moving forward or whatever those goals might be. And so the Blackberry flower essence really helps people who are looking to engage on a new level, who are looking to try something new, so that they don't, give up too easily, and that they have that strength and courage to get to the end, actually make it so that you have a real thing.
Agree. Blackberry is one that's always great for any kind of manifestation, trying to work with that energy of making something happen. And so, if there has been fear holding one back and subsequent inertia, like just not being able to kind of just do it, try it and get past a certain block. If you know how, as you say, Kathleen, if you know how blackberry grows, I mean, it's starting from under the ground and it branches off and has all of this underground growth that will just push up at and break through the ground in all the places, no matter what the kind of soil is, or like it doesn't matter if it's this hard clay. I mean, it's breaking through, and that force that it has to do that and to keep coming back, even if you cut it down to the ground or inches under the earth, it just keeps coming back. So if you need that kind of energy to keep trying at something and to break free from inertia, I love the Blackberry for doing that.
Well, thanks for being part of this. Thanks for you, Ro, and for all of our listeners out there. We really appreciate you, coming along on this ride with us. The whole topic of imposter syndrome is one that's so sensitive and so tricky. And we really hope that somewhere in here, some of these essences landed for you, where you heard them and you were like, yeah, that might be a good compatriot for me in this next cycle of my growth. And we do so hope that all of you find a way to navigate through the imposter syndrome, because the world really needs us. The world really needs more flower essences, and it needs all of us to be able to talk about them and to share them with people that we know and love, and to help them be in the world in a greater way, so that more people can get help. Because imposter syndrome isn't just for us; it's also for the people that you're touching as well. It's like if you can help yourself, then you can help another set of people that might feel this, and then they can do the work that they're supposed to do. So the more of us that heal these challenges, these wounds, the better the world gets, because the more of us that are doing our work, the better things will be. So thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. We hope that you will come join us over at the School for Flower Essence Studies. We have, free monthly events. We have lots of great resources on the website, and we hope that you're along on the journey. We have so many things just over the horizon that are getting ready to launch that we'll be letting you know about. But until then, thanks so much.
Thanks. Bye bye now.